Ali al-Qari then mentions another reason as to why many of the pious predecessors may have objected to the study of rational theology. He mentions منازعتهم ومجادلتهم ولو كان على الحق انجراله غالبا إلى مخاصمتهم المؤدية إلى الأخلاق الفاسدة والأحوال الكاسدة. Meaning they're disputing with them and arguing and debating with them, even if it's upon the path of truth, it may lead in many cases towards foul language and bad mannerisms and bad characteristics and foul sort of etiquette. And so we see in many cases many people who debate, many people who fall into argumentation, they resort to foul language, foul etiquette, all of which is against Islamic teachings. Al-Ghazali talks about this further in his Al-Ihya, in his revival of the religious sciences, and it's narrated from Abu Yusuf, one of the main students of Abu Hanifa, أنه لا تجوز الصلاة خلف المتكلم, that it is not permissible to pray behind a mutakallim, a theologian, a rational or speculative theologian, وإن تكلم بحق, even if he were to speak with the truth, لأنه مبتدع, because he is a innovator, ولا تجوز خلف المبتدع, and the prayer is not permissible behind an innovator. And it's thus important to note that what Ali al-Qari's Ustad, what Ali al-Qari's teacher said, Ali al-Qari mentions وَعَرَضْتُ هَذِهِ الرِّوَايَةَ عَلَى أُسْتَاذِي, that I presented this narration upon my teacher, فقال, then he said, تأويله أنه لا يكون غرضه إظهار الحق. Its interpretation is that his objective was not to make apparent the truth, meaning the objective of the theologian in this case, which Abu Yusuf is describing, his objective was not to seek the truth or to speak with the truth, but rather simply argumentation and disputation. The following story demonstrates this point even further. It's narrated that Abu Hanifa disliked argumentation even if it were based on the truth. And it's narrated from Abu Yusuf that he said that we were sitting one day with Abu Hanifa, and we were sitting as a group with him. And then two men were presented to him. And they said that one of these men says that the Quran is created, and the other person disputed him and said that the Quran is not created. Abu Hanifa replied that do not pray behind both of them. Abu Yusuf then said, as for the first person, then yes, I understand. But as for the second person, then what is the problem with what is the problem with praying behind him? Meaning, why should I not pray behind him? Because the second person is saying the truth. Because of course, in Orthodox Sunni theology, we believe people tend to believe that the Quran is uncreated. Abu Hanifa replied very interestingly, indeed both of them disputed or argued in the religion, and dispute or argumentation in the religion is an innovation. This has also been narrated in Miftah al-Sa'ada. Ali al-Qari mentions it may be that the reason for censoring and condemning the latter was due to his making an unrestricted statement, because at least according to Orthodox Sunni theology, indeed the Quran, in terms of its being sent down to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and in terms of what is written by the hands of men, and in terms of what is recited by the tongue, and in terms of the recitation of the tongues, and in terms of the memorization of the chests, then indeed the actions of the servants, such as memorization and recitation and writing, all of these are created because they are the actions of men. But as for what is recited, as for what is memorized, as for what is written down, then that in its essence is uncreated. This is of course the very famous distinction that a lot of Ash'ari and Maturidi theologians make between, first of all, the concept of lafzi bil Qur'ani makhluq, my pronunciation of the Quran is created, meaning the Quran in its essence, what is being recited is uncreated, but my pronunciation of it is uncreated. This was a very controversial issue within early Islam, and it's interesting, Al-Bukhari and Al-Muslim, the two most famous hadith scholars in Islamic history, held this position, and Al-Bukhari was subject to an inquisition in Nishapur by Muhammad ibn Yahya, one of the main scholars of that area, due to his belief. And it's interesting because Ahmad ibn Hanbal, the famous traditionalist, would have viewed such a statement as heresy. But then Al-Bukhari and Al-Muslim, two later traditionalists, understood the importance of having a nuanced conversation. They understood the importance of saying, no, we cannot say that our actions are uncreated, because our actions are our actions. They're created, they're contingent. They're the acts of contingent beings. As for what is recited, then that is the speech of the divine. Hence, the speech of the divine is uncreated. They saw the importance of distinguishing between the actions of the creation and the Quran in its essence, in itself. And this shows the development of even theology within traditionalist or more scripturalist or more textual strands of Sunni Islam, namely the Athari or Ahlul Hadith school of thought. A second issue that arises is the distinction between Kalam Nafsi and Kalam Lafzi. Kalam Nafsi and Kalam Lafzi is a distinction that was made by the likes of Ibn Kullab and others, and it was adopted by Al-Ash'ari and the Ash'ari school, and it was used by the Maturidi school as well. Kalam Nafsi was the idea that God's pre-eternal attribute of speech that resides with his essence, it does not contain sounds or letters, and it is not created. Hence, this is Kalam Nafsi. This is speech that resides with his essence. As for Kalam Lafzi, the pronounced speech, then this is a manifestation, a created manifestation of the uncreated speech that resides with the essence of God. So Kalam Lafzi is a created manifestation of Kalam Nafsi. It consists of sounds and letters, and it's contingent. Hence, although the manifestation is contingent, what is manifested, meaning the Kalam Nafsi, is uncreated. This concept has been subject to a lot of scrutiny and a lot of discourse. Salafis and Atharis tend to disagree very heavily with this concept, and they say that this is an innovation. However, Ash'aris and Maturidis would say that this is based within scriptural teachings, that this is based within sound Islamic methodology, and this is simply a deduction that is made based upon earlier Islamic teachings. Interestingly enough, Ahmad Rida Khan, a very famous latter theologian who would also be very controversial as well due to the Barelvi Deobandi schism, in one of his works, Anwarul Mannan fi Tawheed al-Quran, the lights of the favourer in the oneness of the Quran, he mentions that he critiques this idea of Kalam Nafsi and Lafzi, and he says that this was a later development that was founded due to the need to respond to the Mu'tazila and due to the need to explain this concept to those of a lowly or lower intellect. So essentially he says that this is not a particularly Islamic idea, this isn't a particularly orthodox idea, this isn't found within the Salaf, but it was a necessary idea in order to refute the Mu'tazila. And then he goes on to give his own description of divine speech and how it manifests within the creation, and he says that rather what is the case is that the divine speech is manifested, right? He talks about tajalli, and he says that the divine speech is manifested, and what is being manifested is uncreated, but the manifestations themselves are created. And he gives an analogy here, without any comparison, of course, between divine speech and anything else. But for example, the angels, they manifest themselves in various forms. Even if the angels manifest themselves in various forms when they come to individuals or peoples or to prophets, that doesn't mean that what is being manifested, meaning the angels in their essence, that does not mean that they are multiple entities. Rather, the manifestations are multiple, but what is being manifested is one essence. Hence, the same would apply to the Quran or divine speech. Even if divine speech has many manifestations, the thing that is manifested itself is one and uncreated. And so, this distinction is a very interesting and important part of the Islamic tradition, and it's a very controversial point at that. One may ask, what does he mean by saying حيث أطلق, where he made an unrestricted statement? The reply is very simple. The Quran is indeed uncreated according to many rationalist theologians from the orthodox Sunni side of things. However, what they would disagree with is making an unrestricted statement due to the fact that our recitation and our actions are created. Hence, our recitation and our memorization and our writing is created. Whereas the Quran, in its essence, what is being written, what is being memorized, what is being recited, is uncreated. Hence, it wouldn't be correct to make an unrestricted statement, as that might lead people to believing that our recitation of the Quran and our writing of the Quran and our memorization of the Quran is uncreated. And that would be problematic, as that would essentially be saying that the contingent is uncreated and eternal. Thus, a very important point is established here, that disputation and argumentation is not necessarily prohibited, but it is looked down upon in Islamic circles and Islamic teachings. Indeed, most religions and a lot of philosophical traditions would very heavily condemn argumentation and most debating, as most debates and most argumentation do not lead to a more nuanced understanding of the truth. They do not lead to two sides seeking to understand the truth. They do not lead to a genuine attempt to understand the truth. It simply leads to both sides attempting to show their superiority over the other side, and in many cases it leads to bad manners, bad etiquettes, and it polarizes the conversation even more. And in most cases, it just entrenches both sides even deeper into their own schools of thought and their own worldviews. In fact, one is very unlikely to change anybody's mind based on a debate. Of course, in some cases, debates are actually good. For example, if two genuine scholars or two genuine learned people trying to seek the truth come together in a very academic and respectful discourse, but that is of course very rare. This problem is even more multiplied nowadays by the internet and the fact that people nowadays debate each other left, right and centre, and there's no understanding of etiquette or attempting to seek a common ground.